a case that was done recently, where somebody from an oil company. I handled that case when I was in OPD. We ensured that the victim, the survivor, and her family was actually put in protective custody to ensure diligent prosecution of the case. Because you find out that most of the time, because the victims are scared, they just go on the ground. They don't want to come out anymore because of fear of victimization, and also fear of being molested by other people and probably threatened by other people. In Lagos State, again, we have what we call the mandatory reporting. I don't know if you can see, I'm not so much of, what's it called? I'm not so much of an IT person, but I'm just going to be showing you some leaflets. Can you see? It's mandatory reporting. It means that anywhere, especially for children, that you witness a person being violated, you have a duty to report. Especially if you deal with children, if you're a police officer, you're a civil servant, you're a teacher, you're a landlord, you're a parent, and you fail to report, it carries 2 years imprisonment if you fail to report. So we are all, anybody that works with victims or survivors, we are all mandatory reporters in Lagos State. Then also to assist the people of Lagos State, the Lagos State government domesticated the VAP, which is called the Violence Against Persons Act, into what we call the Domestic Violence Law in Lagos State, and simplified this one. This is a simplified version of the Domestic Violence Law to ensure that everybody is written in very simple English, to ensure that everybody in Lagos State can actually read and understand and know exactly where to go and what to do. And also, what we have, like the police officer had said before, there are departments and agencies in Lagos State that actually handles cases of domestic violence, and especially rape or defilement. Office of the Public Defender is there to assist, to be the lawyer, the counsel for the survivor in court. We have the Directorate of Citizens' Rights that will actually sit and listen and ensure that the person gets justice at the end of the day. We also have in Lagos State what we call, and I'll break it down into 4 areas: the law enforcement agents, the police, and the FSU and the gender desk that can assist. And that is where people can go to. And like I said, the family court is there as well, where people can get respite and get justice. And of course, when you're talking of medicals, we have the Mirabel Center, which had been mentioned earlier, the primary health centers, we have government hospitals, and of course the domestic violence response team, to ensure that the victim actually gets medical support that they need. And of course the social services, which will provide the psychosocial support, counseling. We have the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. We have the Ministry of Youth and Social Development as well, that will provide psychosocial support for survivors. Also, apart from these ones, we have the NGOs. Then let me quickly go to one area, because the hypothetical question I was given is that a woman was raped, but there was no evidence. There was no physical evidence. But the fact that there is no physical evidence does not mean that that is the end of the case. In Lagos State, we have the DNA, the forensic lab in Lagos State. Now we do DNA tests. My sister police officer had mentioned earlier on that when a victim comes, the victim should not wash their clothes. They must not brush their hair. They must not take a bath, so that they don't distort evidence, so that this evidence can be taken to the lab for proper forensic evaluation, and DNA is done. Even where DNA, maybe for any reason at all, the DNA has been distorted. Now in Lagos State, we have so many organizations, security outfits that does lie detective. We have used it and we have tested it. They use lie detectors to actually know when somebody is telling a lie. For instance, there's no physical evidence, but then you can now do the lie detective test to actually know if the perpetrator is really the suspect. The lie detective test can either exonerate or implicate a person. It will also implicate the survivor or the victim if the victim is telling a lie as well. You will know from that test. So these are tests that we are now doing in Lagos State. It has helped in some cases. There was a case of a school where there was no evidence because the child was a 3-year-old. And all evidence had been distorted. But because of the lie detective test, we knew that the perpetrator was actually lying, and he failed the test. So these are areas that we actually need to encourage, and we are currently using in Lagos State to ensure that victims, get proper judgment. And then, for instance, again, we are saying that what can we do? What can the government do more to ensure that rape cases, rape offenders do not go unpunished? The first thing is that the law all over, the VAP law, which is Violence Against Persons Act, the Child Rights Act, the Lagos State Criminal Code, the Domestic Violence Law, all says that anybody that perpetrates this offense and is found guilty, that the punishment is life. But then we still have some people that are still giving below the line sentencing. This is something that the government we have to really sit down and ensure that everybody, that the punishment is uniform all over the place. And then there are some, I'm taking it holistically for Nigeria now. There are some states that have not actually domesticated the child rights law, the VAP law, even their criminal code has not been amended to ensure that victims of domestic violence, are properly taken care of, and that the offense is whoever is found guilty is life imprisonment. So let us ensure that everything is the same. Then another area is to strengthen the institutions. For instance, the law enforcement officers, to strengthen them, to ensure that, for instance, the gender desk unit, the family support unit, the domestic violence response team in various states, and then all other NGOs, that we should strengthen the law. We should strengthen the institutions that we have to ensure that they have all the wherewithal, they have all the tools to ensure that, yes, victims are given all the necessary and adequate attention, and then also perpetrators does not go scot-free, that perpetrators does not slip through the net. Because most of the time when perpetrators are released, it is because why? Because the law, or maybe there is a loophole somewhere. Maybe during the investigation, the investigation is shoddy, and because of that, the perpetrators will not slip through the net and go scot-free. Because we must give all the evidence. The court that is going to at the end of the day, that is going to impose punishment or ensure that justice is done, must be given all the tools. That is, must be given all the evidence. Our evidence must be airtight. That is why we must make use of the lie detector. We must make use of the DNA to ensure that the victims, we must ensure protective custody of victims and ensure that the victims are given necessary support. Most of them are not given the support. Because of that, they don't have the wherewithal to come to court to give evidence. Some of them, because of poverty, people will go and bribe them and give them money they have never seen in their life. And because of that, they will now say they are not pursuing the case anymore. And then also to add that, okay, women that are accused falsely, the law is there, and the punishment is 5 years imprisonment if you give false imprisonment. If you give that false imprisonment, false allegation in court, it is what we call perjury. And the person is, and that amounts to 2 years imprisonment. And where a person has gone to the police station and given false accusation, the law says it is 5 years imprisonment. When I was director, Office of the Public Defender, when people come in to make, when they come in with their petitions or they walk in, there is a clause that says that if you give us information that is false and you allow us to act on it, it is 2 years imprisonment. So we make it we let them know. And also the police should also let them know from the outset that, look, if you give us false information before you open your mouth, you are better make sure that what you're saying is the truth, because you are liable to go to prison if you give false imprisonment. And then also, I also want to say finally that in Lagos State, we have what we call the data register for sex offenders. Now in Lagos State, you commit offense, you are convicted. Once you are convicted, your name goes into the register, sex offenders register, and then your face will be shown on telly. It will be shown in the newspaper because you are already a convicted person. And then this will serve as deterrence to other people that are committing such offenses. I believe I've spoken a bit too much. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Mrs. Rotimi. I mean, the passion is palpable. Thank you so much. We honestly, just listening to you, I feel that there are people out there that are working really hard in society to make sure that this, the perpetrators get punished and victims get justice. So thank you, Ma. We really, I can see your passion. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And we have Dr. Shagaya. Eshima, thank you, Ma. We have Dr. Shagaya, I think, finally. I see Dr. Shagaya. Can we go ahead, Dr. Shagaya? We've introduced you twice already. Hopefully we have you now. Dr. Shagaya, you're on mute. We can't hear you. You're muted, Dr. Shagaya. If you can hear me, we cannot hear you because you're muted. Okay. So you're not muted, but we can't hear you. We cannot hear you, cannot. So you're not muted, but yet we cannot hear you. Yeah, I think there's something going on with the connection of Dr. Shagaya. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think probably she should go back and come in back.
Okay, Dr. Shagaya, they're asking if you want to hang up and then rejoin the call. Maybe something's wrong with the connection. All right. In the meantime, though, we'll take Dr. Badering. Thank you, Dr. Shagaya. We'll expect you when you come back. In the meantime, we'll hear from Dr. Badering. Thank you again, Mrs. Rotimi.
Professor Badering.
Professor Badering.
That's okay.
I'm so sorry. What did I say now, Mr. Ba? I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
I apologize. I apologize. Emma Benusinisa.
No, it's fine.
All right. So we're going to hear again from another lawyer. Professor Badering is a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He's a professor of law at the prestigious School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, in London, where he teaches and conducts research in human rights and Islamic law. So we're asking Professor Badering, I beg your pardon, to share with us, particularly on the issue of patriarchy. So we live in this male-dominated society, as we know very well. I mean, of course, men are also being raped. Let's just be very clear about that. Men are also victims of rape, but the majority of victims of rape are women, because we live in society where men are more dominant and more, whatever that is. So we're basically asking him to share with us a little bit on the dynamics of how is rape, in this patriarchal society as we find ourselves, how is the issue of rape more pronounced in more male-dominated society? Why is there a heavy burden on women, who are the most victims, to prevent rape, as opposed to us telling men to be able to control themselves? So I won't talk too much because Professor Badering has a lot to share with us. Go ahead, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. And I want to really commend you for organizing this event. Now, the series of questions sent to me relates to the issue of restitution and how can we find ways of ameliorating the occurrences of rape. Now, one thing I might say is that, you see, rape, looking at it from international perspective, it's unfortunately on the rise everywhere. Now, there was a report in the UK in January 2020. You'll be surprised that the report found out that, in the last 5 years, from January 2020, reported rape cases have, grown by 65%. You'll be able to see. Now, but convictions have actually gone down. So it's a serious problem internationally. It's not only in Nigeria. And if you read, materials on the US, Canada, it's really on the rise. And I think it's high time that, not only internationally, domestically, all countries, particularly also in relation to Nigeria, should look into it. And I'm very happy with what I've heard all over from the police, from the Lagos state government and things like that. We are really doing well. Now, rape is not new. Actually, you find out that it is covered in international instruments, apart from, domestic law. As early as 1949, if you look in the Geneva Conventions, you find out that, there are provisions in there that, criminalize, sexual exploitation. If you look in, many international human rights instruments, even the ICC Rome Statute, you find out that, rape is an element of crime against humanity. And in all those elements, you find out that, there's a element of restitution provided in there because of the fact that human rights violations, human rights instruments provide for redress for victims. Now, coming to domestic law in relation to Nigeria, the first question I have here is what's the position of the law on restitution to rape? Now, previously, you find out that, laws in relation to rape were actually much more punitive rather than restitutive. Even in the UK, the old law was, a 1956 law. It was much more punitive than restitutive or providing a personal redress or compensation for victims or survivors, as you said. But since 2003, under the new law, UK Sexual Offence Act of 2003, you find out that, there have been provisions for restitution there. And this is why I think that the VAP law, in Nigeria now, the VAP Act, that is Violence Against Persons Protection Act, which was mentioned earlier, which was adopted in 2015, is very similar to the law in the UK. And if you look at it, one will say that it is the most expansive, and there are provisions in there, for restitution. Now, also compensation. You find out that under that law, there's provision that, the court can award appropriate compensation or restitution to the victim as it may deem fit in such situations. So you find out that, and apart from that, also the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015 in Nigeria. So from 2015 upwards, I think the law has, been updated to take recognition of the fact that, rape survivors should be entitled to some sort of restitution. Now, if you look at all reports, rape results in physical, sexual, psychological, trauma. Sometimes death, so, and even emotional trauma, which perhaps may not be restitutable. But then the law now recognizes that. So both under procedural law within the Administration of Criminal Justice Act and also within substantive law, I'm talking particularly now about VAP, although only a few states I understand have, domesticated it in Nigeria. And I understand that the federal government now is pushing for the VAP Act to be domesticated by most states. If that is done, then it provides for restitution, and also the Administration of Criminal Justice Act also provides for restitution. Now in the UK, for example, and in other parts of the developed world, there are also provisions apart from restitution that is ordered by the court. You find out that there are also what usually is called, the crime victim compensation schemes. The government set up certain schemes, in which perhaps, crime victims, including rape survivors, can apply for some sort of compensation and restitution. So it's quite, important to know that. And you may also want to know this, although a lot of people may not want to refer to this, they want to critique it. If you look at the Sharia, Sharia court in the north, there's some sort of compensation, although it's very, very minute, whereby apart from the punishment, the victim of rape under those laws are also entitled to some minor restitution in form of paying what they call standard dowry to such a victim. Now, the second one is, the punishment. Does the punishment need to be strengthened? Rape is heinous, and you find out that has been said by, my people who spoke before me. The highest punishment is life imprisonment, and I think under VAP is also quite very good. The problem earlier, which I mean, Omomobi, the CSP mentioned earlier, was that you find some courts actually giving lesser conviction, lesser terms of prison terms. Now, if you look under VAP has sort of corrected that by indicating that the minimum sentence that can be awarded is 12 years. And that is in consonance with international practice. So the VAP law is really very good. And what government should do is to encourage, states to domesticate it. Now, what else could you have after life imprisonment? Some people have been calling for the death penalty. I think last month or 2 months ago, the National Assembly was discussing whether the death penalty should be, under the Sharia provisions in the North, the Sharia courts, actually, if the person committed the rape is a married person or it is committed against a married person, the punishment is stoning to death. But this also has human rights implications. You find a whole lot of, the international, human rights organization condemning that, indicating that, well, and the issue of the death penalty also becomes an issue. So I think the highest punishment is already within the law, that is life imprisonment. So it's quite, and also, the deterrence aspect of it is the, sex offenders register. It's a very good one. It's very, very deterrent because in the UK, it deters people because it's a public document, and I can commend Lagos State for doing that. If you have the sex offenders register, they put you on it, everybody can contact it. Sometimes people will actually protest. If they are aware that somebody who is on the register is now their neighbor, has taken a home near them, they protest against them being there. So it's it's a big deterrent, which I think perhaps maybe could be encouraged. Now the other question is, why do mothers not pay much more emphasis on teaching their sons about consent and also respect? I think it's the right thing to do. When we have children, we need to train them not only at home. I believe, I know sometimes the issue of sex education is sometimes controversial, especially from the religious point of view. But I think because of the rise in rape crime, it is important actually in schools, to educate children about this, part of, sex education at home in the schools. And also, part of, the human rights teaching generally, because it's about respect for human dignity, because, rape is a violation of the dignity of the victim. So teaching children about the need to respect the other, it's very, from all religious perspectives and from legal perspectives and moral point of view, I think parents have a responsibility to do that. So good moral upbringing can really help. Rape, people shy away from talking about it previously, but today it is in the public realm. So we should feel free to talk about it and also talk about it in relation to our children. Religious institutions, as I said, should also play a very important part in doing that. Now, the other is there any connection between prevalence of rape in recent time and the patriarchy? Well, in patriarchal societies, as I said, may not be necessary because it's also on the rise even in the UK. But I apparently, I believe what has caused the rise, particularly in relation to Nigeria and the developing world, I will refer to, there are some sort of false stereotypes and misconceptions. Apparently, for example, there's this misconception amongst the male in African society, particularly including Nigeria, that when a woman says no, she means yes in disguise. Women like to be coerced, sort of. There's this mentality. So, the issue of consent usually becomes very difficult because people have the mental, connotation that, well, if you tell a woman, they wouldn't say yes, they will say no, and they just want to be coerced. So there's need to be some sort of an orientation to change that sort of perception. And also the concept of man power, the macho man, whereby delinquent gangs, delinquent groups, they want to use rape, as a sort of instrument to show their macho power, Then power rape, we have not talked about it because, that's also quite prevalent in Nigeria in recent times, rape by security apparatus, security officers, police officers, military officers, that's, power rape. It's also quite, and people in authority, position of authority. We've heard about lecturers in universities who are in fiduciary positions, parental positions to students, people in authority. So it's quite, and the law provides for that actually. And I mean, all those areas, perhaps maybe there's need for a proper orientation. I think the most important point is, I mean, there's need to deorientate about, I mean, male control in patriarchal societies. You know, it's I mean, using rape as a sort of, I mean, control over the female gender. So it's important to to teach equality and also respect for women generally in our societies. Now, lastly, it talks about what exactly are those things that embolden the rapist to perpetrate their dastardly act. It's very difficult. I mean, when I got this, it's very difficult to predict or determine the mind of a rapist. You know, maybe, I mean, when Dr. Shagaya talks, because there's the perception that perhaps maybe it's a sort of, I mean, illness and things like that, maybe he'll be able to refer to that. But different studies, you know, have identified different possible, I mean, causes. You know, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of, I mean, false stereotypes, you know, the male macho power and things like that. People wanting to use rape as an instrument of punishment. For example, you know, some people might see that, I mean, a lady has done something to them, which perhaps, I mean, pains them, and they use rape as an instrument of punishment and things like that. So there are various, you know, causes. And I think education is very important. Education, we should continue talking about it. And this is why this program is really very good. Don't sweep it under the carpet. It's international. We have to continue talking, put it there in the public space, talk about it all the time, you know, and I hope that, I mean, by that, people's orientation will change about it, and respect for human dignity, particularly of the female, will rise, and this scourge will continue to go down. I hope I've covered the questions, but I'll be happy to answer any other questions, I mean, when we take questions from the floor. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we'll move to Dr. Shagaya. And you actually did infer his question, trying to get into the mind of the rapist. What's going on in that mind? Is it a psychological problem? Is it a genetic problem? Dr. Shagaya, do we have you?
You're on mute.
Oh, Dr. Shagaya, we should have
okay, yes.
Today.
Can't hear you.
Dr. Shagaya, oh my. Okay. Do we not have Dr. Shagaya? Because I thought I saw him a minute ago.
Yes, he's here.
Okay, but we can't hear him. Oh my.
And he's not on mute.
And he's not on mute. So I see him. So Dr. Shagaya, we see you and we see you speaking, but we can't hear you. SubhanAllah, this is quite something. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I can see you speaking, Dr. Shagaya, but we can't hear you. Right? Anybody else here, Dr. Shagaya? Can anyone hear Dr. Shagaya, or is it just me?
I can't hear him.
We can't hear him.
Yeah.
So
Shagaya, I'm so sorry. It's a shame. I'm so sorry. We can't hear you. I apologize.
Maybe he has to check his speakers. I mean, his microphone.
Yeah, maybe.
He can check his microphone on his laptop.
Okay.
You know, click on the arrow near the microphone, and then you can select. There'll be something like select a speaker. Change it. If it's on the same system, select speakers. Select speakers.
So he has done that.
I mean, okay.
You've done that? Okay.
You've done that.
Right. Okay.
That's really weird.
So maybe what we'll do is, can we have somebody, one of the admin troubleshoot?
Okay, I need to confirm if he's using an earpiece. If he's using an earpiece, kindly remove the earpiece. So that might be the problem, actually.
He said he has removed it.
He has removed the earpiece. So he can hear us fine, but we cannot
hear
hear.
You should, okay, you can leave the meeting and join back again.
You can try the volume button on his laptop, in case it's just on mute. The volume button of his device. Yes.
Can you increase the volume, Dr. Shagaya?
Yes, of your device.
Okay. So can we have one of the admin maybe chat Dr. Shagaya privately and see if we can help him get this sorted out?
Okay, no problem. We'll do that.
Yeah, let's have one of the admin chat with him and see if we can help him get this sorted out. And I'm so sorry. And we will, I mean, thank you to our speakers. We have about 15 minutes and we hope that before then we can get Dr. Shagaya. But in the meantime, there's some questions that have come up for some of our panelists, and I'll try to orient that question to who I think it's appropriate. So we had mentioned that we want the victim or the survivor has been called to go to the hospital or the police station. So CSP, Omomabi, if you're still here, what is the advice? Should they go first to the police station or should they go first to the hospital? We just wanted to be very clear where we need the victim to report. Hospital first or the police station? If we don't have Mrs. Omomabi, we can have Mrs. Rotimi help us out. We just want to get a very clear answer to that question.
Well, you know, yes. I personally always feel that they should go to the hospital first, maybe a private one. The reason is that most of the time, by the time the survivor goes to the police station or to the hospital later, the evidence has been distorted. The evidence will have been distorted. But if they go to a private hospital first and then have the victim examined, then probably collect all the necessary physical evidence that they need to collect and preserve it, then he can now go to the police station where the police will now give a form that the victim will take to Mirabel Center or to a government hospital and do another examination again. Because you see, preservation of evidence is key. There's no point going to the police station and then by the time the doctor examines, the evidence is eroded, it's gone. Then you don't have anything to present before the court. So I will always say the first thing is go to any hospital near you first and make sure that the needful is done and then head to the police station. The police station will now give you a form to now take to a general hospital. So that even if the evidence is distorted, the first evidence is preserved and you can still use it in the court of law.
Perfect.
So that's my opinion, and that's what I always tell the victim. And I'll tell you the reason why.
Right.
Most of the time when they get to the police station, they sit on with the dress that they're wearing and everything, they sit on a seat that somebody else had sat on. And then you see the fabric and everything would have absorbed whatever is there on the seat before. So by the time they are now doing the examination, you find out that you have a lot of distorted what's it called? Evidence.
Right, DNA evidence, right.
Exactly, DNA evidence, and it's very, very vital for DNA evidence, especially where the only evidence you have might probably be the DNA evidence. So it's always get better to go to a hospital first. That's my own personal opinion for forensic purposes.
Thank you,
But
Mrs. Rotimi.
The police always argued the other way to say, come to the police station first. But then, by then, most of the time, the evidence will have been gone. And there's nothing you can do about preserving that evidence again. We need evidence to be able to put the man behind bars. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Rotimi, for that. So we'll move on to the next question. Mrs. Rotimi said it well. So you have, thank you, ma. People are quite pleased with that response. Move on to the next question. Somebody had asked, we heard a lot of things about Lagos, about how things are improving in Lagos State, all the centers that we have. So there's concern that things are not as progressive in the north. And maybe Mrs. Rotimi, you can help us a little bit more on that ground, and maybe Professor Badering as well can share with us. But I think, you know, things are progressive. Lagos is a progressive state. Can you speak to that in other less progressive states, if I can use that term, particularly in the northern part of the country? What are the trends?
Yeah, the reason is that because they haven't domesticated the BAP law. They have not domesticated the child rights law. They have not domesticated or upgraded the criminal code or the Sharia law that they have. The reason being that most of the time, people attach all these crimes to religion or culture. And it's not supposed to be so. A human being is a human being anywhere. A girl that is raped in Lagos must be protected. A child that is raped in the north must be protected. Let's leave religion out of it. Let's leave culture out of it and protect our children. So they must what would I say? They must ensure that they domesticate all these laws so that the laws will strengthen them and will enhance the work of the law enforcement officers there. And that is also the reason why even the CEDA law, the Domestic Violence and Discrimination Against Women law, has not been passed by the House of Assembly since all these years. But Lagos State took it upon themselves and ensured that we have the domestic violence law in Lagos State, which I have earlier run. This is the law, which I have earlier on posted. And so many other states are also doing the same. So we have to encourage our brothers, our sisters in the North that please, a human being is a human being. Let's forget religion, let's forget culture, and do the needful. Thank you.
We need to domesticate these laws in the North. I think Professor Badari had something to share. Thank you, Ma. I think Professor Badari had something to share.
Yes, I mean, thank you very much. I mean, I think the populists have a very big role to play. You see, a lot of the time, we don't need to leave these things to legislators alone. I mean, not long ago, actually, I saw somebody, there's a petition going on now online by the Bauchi State. I mean, an organization put a petition that the Bauchi State House of Assembly should domesticate the VAP law. And it has attracted more than 10,000 signatures. You know, a lot of the time, I mean, here, what makes things happen in the UK is that people don't just shut up. Because, I mean, if you talk about legislatures, how many people are there in the legislation? And a lot of the time, they are promoting their own interest. People should write up to the beat. And then, I mean, if people rise up and indicate that, and I think, you see, my own perception, there's no religion that allows rape. From my own perception, I think religion actually can play a very good role if people are allowed to speak. Anybody who argues that, well, it is because of religion, they are just, I mean, using religion negatively. As I said, I mean, even in the religious institutions, the schools, the churches, the mosques, they should talk about this, because if you look in the religious books, you find it there that rape is prohibited. So it's quite important that people get up to this. I agree totally that the VAP law needs to be, because it is the most advanced, I would say. It is very, very similar to the UK law. It should be, I mean, I don't see any reason why it should not be domesticated. And I think the federal government should push. I think not long ago, I read that the federal government, I think Buhari mentioned that they will push and ensure that perhaps, I mean, and the state governors also indicate that they were going to declare a state of emergency. If they want to declare a state of emergency for rape, the right thing to do is to domesticate the VAP law, because it is the most advanced, I mean, thing. So I think don't let us leave it to only the legislators. People should talk about it, similar to what is happening in Bauchi. Let civil society organizations, you know, bring up petitions and let people sign up to it. If, for example, you have in a state, you have, I mean, 500,000 people or 1 million people signing up to a petition, the state will have to do something. That's why laws are made here in the UK. People will petition, and there's a rule here in the House of Commons. If a petition attracts 100,000 signatories, it must be, the issue must be raised in the House of Commons. So similarly, people should rise. You cannot just sit down and say that things will happen. It's not only about government, but people have a duty to say that this is what we want. So I'm encouraging that the civil society organizations should do that, really.
Absolutely. Thank you, Professor Badari. And just what you had mentioned last week, we heard from you know, Ustaz Nuruddin Lemo, and he talked about, you know, how Islamic law, right, in the Sharia does talk about, you know, this crime and the punishment for it. Religion is very vocal about it. I wanted to just quickly touch base with Sister Mulikat, Hajia Mulikat. Somebody had asked a question about the correct age, and I know we're running out of time here, but I just wanted to hear a soundbite from Hajia Mulikat on what is the right age to start talking to our children about rape. Do we have Hajia Mulikat here? What is that age? Is there a specific number? Is there a time? Is it when they enter school?
That's thank you very much. That's a very good question. The moment your child is able to understand how to eat, put food in their mouth, how to say, Mom, Dad, so and so came to the house today. That is the time you start talking to your child about parts of the body, what is a good touch, what is a bad touch, and how you know, okay, you don't sit on somebody's lap, how to give them a self-worth, how to make them value their bodies. That is the best time to start having conversations. Because if we start having conversations at a very early age about all aspects of our life, there's no time we'll leave out that which is relevant. And we'll talk about this, sexual health, all of it. Sexual assault, once that is the time we begin to have these conversations with our children. Any conversation at all should start early so that it builds rapport and trust, establishes trust between our children. So if anything happens out of the ordinary, you are the first point of call.
Excellent. Thank you, Hajia Malika. Thank you. We're running a bit out of time. If we have any, and I do want Brother Abdul Rashid to share with us a few thoughts on MICA membership and what to expect for the next call. But if we have any extra last minute, 30-second sound bites for the audience from the speakers. I don't know if CSP Omamabi, is she still with us? Mrs. Omamabi, is she still with us? No? Okay.
I'm still there. I'm still here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I think we lost
you. Asked a question the other time. Yeah, I have a problem with the network. The question asked the other time whether it is advisable to report at the police station first before going to the hospital. That is just what I want to, say here. That some of the victims, majority of them, if you tell them to go first to the hospital, they will tell you they don't have the money. Majority of them are not aware that there are free places where they can get free medication, free treatment. So when they come to the police station, we advise them. Do you know that even in most cases, we have to even, go as far as giving out cash for them to go to the for the treatment. So I strongly believe there's need for them to come, because majority of them are not aware that we have places where they can go to for free medical service. So it's advisable for them to come to the police, then we direct them. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Mrs. Momabi. And I can see Mrs. Rotimi shaking her head, but I don't know if we can resolve this, if we can resolve this query here. But I understand. I think that there is, who's going to help us here? Who's going to be
can I just say something? There is Primary Health Care Center, which is free, that is closer and in almost every area, nooks and cranny of Lagos State.
Okay. So there are resources, Mrs. Rotimi is sharing. There are resources.
The purpose of going to serve is to preserve. Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're not going to be able to solve this, but this is good, and I think that there is merit to both arguments, right? Go to the hospital so you can get the evidence preserved, but people are not going to the hospital because they cannot afford it. It is a reality that we know very well, but they're primary health care centers. So there's always a solution to a problem. And once you fix that problem, then you find, there's another problem again. But we know that there are resources available, and we want to thank our panelists. I don't know if anybody has any last minute sound bites. We have about 3 minutes, but I want to just get any last
if I just say something, please. I think awareness, some Momobi mentioned, people don't know. There's important to be awareness. Now, for example, in the UK, I want to share this again. The Crown Prosecution Service has this, what they call the policy for prosecuting rape, policy for prosecuting rape, in which you will see assurances, different assurances. Telling victims what they need to do, that if you report to us, this is what we will do, this is the steps. So it's a policy statement. I think Nigerian government, state government, the federal government should also, this is very, very important, and it's free over the internet. People can read through it and see the policy. They will be assured. Then secondly, I'm not very sure. Okay, I see Mrs. Rotimi showing something.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We have something similar in Lagos State. I'm just showing you that we have something similar in Lagos State.
Lagos State is always a leader. We know, yes. Lagos State is always a leader. Thank you very much. Let other states. The other thing I want to talk about is this. I don't know whether I heard it rightly. I was very surprised. Being a human rights person, that rape offenses are not bailable. In the UK, it is bailable. But you are not entitled to bail. It's not an entitlement, but it's bailable. If the police takes a person to court, if it's the court will look into it. If it's not a dangerous person, they can grant him bail. But from a human rights point of view, if in Nigeria it's not a bailable offense, I think that could be problematic.
No. Can I come in? It is bailable. All offenses are bailable, even murder, like you had said. It is the circumstances, and then it is at the discretion of the courts.
That's right.
If the court feels that this man will not run away and he has guarantors that they can rely on, they would. But if they feel that, no, this one is most likely to take a hike, then the court has that discretion. So it's discretionary. So it is bailable. There's no law in Lagos State that is not bailable. So I just need to correct that as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been amazing. We are at time, and it seems like nobody even wants to leave. This is actually very good, right? When we're not.
One more thing. Sorry,
Okay,
one more thing that is very important that people
Go ahead,
always
ma'am.
bring. I have to say is the issue of dressing. Issue of the
Okay.
mode of dressing that we have not addressed. You see, most people say, oh, it's because of, especially the police, why did you wear spaghetti strap? You took your dress. But you see, we have gone to prison on prison visits, and we have actually gone to interview those that have been, that are in, whether awaiting trial or have been convicted. And you'll be surprised and amazed that mode of dressing is the least. Because how can you tell of a 40, I have done a case of a 40-day-old baby, an 11-month-old baby. You won't say it's the mode of dressing that pushed the man. And you see, the first thing, because Prof had said it, when Professor Moshood said it, he had mentioned it, that at times it is because of revenge. I want her to be my girlfriend, but she refused. It could be revenge most of the time. And then it can be man power, egoism. Those are the things that are on the front burner. Drugs, alcohol. Even the mode of dressing is far below the line. We were actually shocked when we actually went to prison and then we did this survey. So a lot of people, especially our law enforcement agencies, we should please remove the issue of dressing.
Right.
A 3-year-old does not dress anyway and asks to be raped.
Yes, ma'am.
We should remove dressing at all when we are